Across from me at our dining table slipped a set of counterfeit paperwork. This guy, Ethan Brooks, was the one I had married under the sunlit pines of Lake Tahoe, and in whom I had placed my whole faith. His hands quivered as he did this. His name had been crossed out in strong red ink and replaced mine as I gazed at the text on the paper. Then it hit me. My nightly bedmate was plotting to take the house. My dad had worked so hard to build, not merely a structure made of bricks and wood, but the symbol of our family's history and prosperity. There was a spot where I thought love meant security, where the air carried the scent of sea air, where the redwoods whispered secrets through the windows, and where I imagined the scent of salt from the water. And yet, at that same moment, all my previous understanding of allegiance crumbled into nothingness. Isn't it absurd? What a strange thing it is that someone may look you in the eyes, smile at you over coffee, kiss you goodbye, and yet be conspiring to ruin your life. Someone who knows just where to strike is the one who is most likely to betray you. Not random people, I've realized. And before I spill the beans about my crumbling marriage and the near loss of the home my dad had laboriously constructed, I must tell you the truth about my privileged upbringing and the most difficult lesson I ever had to learn. The true cost of love at times is learning who is prepared to sacrifice all for you. Most people only see the world through glossy magazine covers. I grew up in that world, a realm of mirror-finish hardwood flooring, vaulted ceilings, and chandeliers that glistened like 1,000 little suns. My father, Robert Brooks, was a highly respected architect in San Francisco. I am his son, Ethan. In the 15 years that he spent building our house, my father did more than merely rake the fog-draped heavens with skyscrapers. Viewing the water from its vantage point on Marin Headlands, the house beheld the Golden Gate Bridge, which twinkled in the evening light like a fiery ribbon. Rumor had it that it was worth $60 million. A genuine house isn't created with money. It's constructed with the character of individuals who live in it. My father, on the other hand, always claimed the mansion wasn't an object of acquisition for him. Rather, it was a work of art, with every beam bearing evidence to his dedication, and every stone placed with the conviction that it had a purpose rather than monetary value. Laura Brooks. My mom was a professor of finance at an Oakland community college. Diamond watches and fancy handbags were never her thing, but she could make stories that even a little child like me could grasp, simplifying complicated themes like saving and investing. Even though her mansion featured marble stairs, a private pond that sparkled in the shadow of the redwoods, and she believed in discipline, she nonetheless made every dollar count. I pleaded with her to get me the newest video game system when I was 8 years old, because it seemed like every other student had one. Her smile spread over her face as she asked me, "Ethan, would you prefer that I buy it for you, or teach you how to earn it yourself?" Until the day I set the console on our kitchen counter, a purchase I made with my own money. I did everything from trim lawns and washcars to fold mountains of clothes. You didn't just buy a game, you learned the value of freedom, my mom added as she fluffed my hair. My parents sent me to public school even though their financial account was full of zeros. Like everyone else, I rode the bus while wearing pants from Target and snacking on peanut butter sandwiches out of a brown paper bag. The moonlight streaming through the mansion's stained glass windows was a secret my pals had no idea I was keeping. Also, you'd need a ladder to get to the top of the walnut bookcases that lined my dad's study. There was this one day when my dad and I were on the upper balcony of the mansion. The wind was blowing in the sea breeze. His arms were crossed, and the light from the setting sun reflected in his eyes. In a low, gravelly voice, he spoke to Ethan and promised that the home will be yours someday. Keep in mind, though, that means you are not a member of the wealthy. Your worth should be determined by your actions, not your inheritance. When he spoke, I didn't quite understand. Back when I was a youngster, I assumed mansions were the standard, and that the swaying of redwood trees outside my bedroom window was just the way things always appeared. However, those words lingered in my mind, inscribed like initials into a weathered oak tree. In the midst of the glitz and glamour of the marble hallways and the glisten of the glass windows, my father was imparting to me something of far more value.
All right.
That material prosperity without knowledge leads only to meaninglessness. The way you treat other people, your resilience in the face of adversity, and your choices in life are the surest paths to happiness. My existence was shrouded in secrecy behind iron gates and well-trimmed hedges where no one ever stepped foot. I learned to keep my world hidden while other youngsters dreamt of becoming rich. The lesson I learned from my parents was that your wallet should never be the focal point of attention. Your heart should be satisfied with it. The truth can be a weapon in the hands of some people, and I discovered how quickly allegiance can fade away when I was 12 years old. Rockridge Middle School was a whirlwind of activity, with lockers banging, neon shoes screeching on the floor, and the aroma of tater tots wafting from the cafeteria. A haven for solace, my friends. Brian stood out with his towering stature and mischievous smile. He was the one who could be relied on to be the most quick with a joke. Jordan was there. He was unassuming, highly intelligent, and had perceptive eyes. And Olivia, our soccer team captain, strong and unstoppable. They made me feel normal. Just Ethan, the little boy who played basketball on uneven asphalt courts and swapped baseball cards. No mansion, no posh address. Well, that was until Brian brought his shiny new gaming system to class. The fluorescent lights made it look silvery. As he passed it to me, Brian beamed and said, "Take a look at this, Ethan. You really must give this game a go." I can still feel the plastic's icy touch on my palms, hear the children's chatter all around me, and taste my own anxiety. After then it fell. The screen spider-webbed into oblivion as it plummeted in a whirling arc before crashing to the floor. As if on the brink of tears, Brian gazed at it with wide eyes and a quiver in his lip. I could hardly breathe as my chest constricted so tightly. "My voice is as thin as tissue paper, and I am incredibly sorry," I said. Desperate to fix it, I ran my fingertips over the broken screen. Afterwards, I confided in my mom. She glanced at me, her face betraying her emotions, before speaking in a low voice. "Errors are inevitable, Ethan. Whatever you want, you can correct it or apologize. You have to learn the lesson on your own, and you can't utilize family money to do it." Thus, I labored for the subsequent 2 weeks. For neighbors, I cleaned leaves. For a diner close to the school, I carried shopping bags up flights of stairs. And for another, I scrubbed sticky tables. With each dollar came a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride. The money for the repairs was finally saved up by me. I dropped off my stack of cash at the repair shop, had my console mended, and slung it in a brown paper bag on my way back to class. Holding it out to Brian, my palms were sweaty. "I solved the problem. I fulfilled my commitment," I declared. No, Brian remained grimaced. Standing next to him, Olivia crossed her arms and spoke the following. "A couple of $100 is really little to someone like you. Did you trade it for a cheaper one, or are you certain this is indeed Brian's console?" The sharpness of her words shattered me. The following day, rumors circulated rapidly. My detractors claimed that I had deliberately damaged Brian's console and replaced it with a counterfeit one. Jordan avoided eye contact completely. As I walked near, the children drew back. Peering past impenetrable barriers was the sensation I had. I was summoned to the principal's office one afternoon. Olivia sent me an icy stare as Brian sat there, head down. The vice principal perused a formal grievance document. After a meeting downtown, my dad showed up, dressed for the part. His gaze remained fixed on me as he listened in silence. As soon as they were through smearing my reputation, he grabbed into his suitcase, and the shop's note verifying the serial number, the repair receipt, the warranty paperwork, and other relevant documents were retrieved. Looking around the room, he finally spoke out. "The truth doesn't need to yell. It only needs to stand firm. I've told my kid." Claims fell apart. For distributing false information, Olivia and Brian received a severe warning. Still, harm had been done. I felt much older than 12 when I left that office. I stopped opening myself to my classmates after that day. I mastered the art of smiling pleasantly and saying, "Sorry, I can't today," whenever someone asked if I would purchase them lunch. Olivia and I crossed paths outside a bargain store one Saturday. She scowled at me from head to toe. "Are you planning to stay here to shop?" Surprised, I didn't know you exclusively ate at fancy places. To those who have already formed an opinion about you, there's no need in trying to justify yourself. So I simply nodded, even now maybe found hiding my worn-out game system in the depths of my closet covered in dust and scratches. Because there are two things that it serves to remind me of. One, example of the rapid destruction of confidence. Second, the key to actual riches is developing the ability to stand on your own 2 feet, free from the mold that envy and jealousy may cast. I believed I had finally escaped the darkness of my youth when I turned 35. In the fog-filled metropolis of San Francisco, where tall buildings and unpredictable weather made for dramatic skyscrapers, I had established myself as a reliable financial security analyst for a major bank. Meetings with clients reverberated through the Bayview executive suites, as did risk assessments and boardroom discussions. However, there were moments when I felt the echoes of solitude and the grip of quietness on me. When I was outside at night, when the horizon shimmered like a field of faraway stars. I had lived my entire life being careful and courteous, but I had never let anybody see the home on Marin Headlands or the vault of memories that I had put away. Up until the day Lucas Miller crossed my path. In Denver, it was a sunny, somewhat chilly morning. Under the bright lights of a full conference hall, with 1,000 eyes peering up at me, I discussed how hackers exploit invisible backdoors into people's financial life. I had been asked to speak at a technological conference on digital banking security. There was courteous applause when I completed. A third-row voice then yelled out, "Is there a limit, Ethan, to how much privacy we can afford to give up in exchange for technology's ease of use?" My attention shifted to the noise, and behold, he stood. His tall, sandy blonde hair was ruffled as if he had just rubbed his fingers through it, and his keen emerald eyes seemed deeper than the words we were speaking. His intention was pure, he simply wanted to know. The floor swayed under my feet ever so slightly. I tracked him down to the coffee area after the session. As if hiding behind an invisible curtain, steam rose between us as he grasped a paper cup. "I thought your speech was interesting," he remarked with a smile. "You gave it personality, which is rare because most speakers make it sound like an IRS handbook." For the better part of an hour, we rambled on and on about cybersecurity, internet marketing, the peculiarities of California childhood, and more. He was a digital marketer and the boss of his own boutique business. He wasn't rich, but there was an obvious creative desire in his eyes. Talking to her was so effortless, totally forthright. My family, my home, and the make and model of my automobile were not the subjects of his incessant questioning. He only inquired, "I was wondering whether you had any plans to visit any nice jazz bars while you were here." My entire life came crashing down in an instant. Our numbers were swapped. Initially, these were work-related texts. Later on, there were calls made in the middle of the night. Starbucks over the weekend. As one strolls around Golden Gate Park, one could see the cypress trees encircled by a cloak of fog. Lucas was an emotional hurricane full of joy ideas and a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. Because of him, I started to think that maybe it was okay to let someone in. Standing hand in hand on a wooden deck with the pine trees swinging above us and the lake glittering like cut glass. We were married 2 years later on a sunny afternoon in Lake Tahoe. Our wedding was intimate with about 30 guests, including my mother Laura and a few close friends. Even though it had been 3 years since his death, the loss of my father was like a rib pain to me. As the makeup artist delicately applied powder to my face, I recalled my mother's close proximity as she spoke to the artist. "If your dad were here today, he'd be beaming. He would hope that you have a wonderful day, Ethan." And I trusted her word. As the celebrant talked, Lucas tightly gripped my hand. As soon as he stated, "You may kiss," our guests cheered as Lucas dipped me backward in a dramatic flourish. My first thought was, finally, I found the life I've always imagined for myself. Upon our return from the wedding, we found ourselves in our apartment in a high-rise on Rincon Hill. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a breathtaking view of the bay. The lights of the Bay Bridge glistened like a necklace suspended over the dark sea. Initially, everything was great. As Lucas and I settled into habits, it was as if we were sharing a secret with each other. Brunch in cozy cafes, nestled in little streets, streaming endlessly through films on cyber attacks. At 2 in the morning, when we were both too tired to sleep, we made light-hearted conversation over burned bread. As I brewed coffee, he'd follow behind, put his arms around my waist, and whisper something under his breath. "Ethan, you are aware that we will age and get irritable side by side, aren't you?" In the dark, when I lay next to him and listened to his breath, there were moments I was convinced. Perhaps after all the secrets and silences, I had finally met someone who loved me unconditionally and didn't want anything in return but my heart. I began to fantasize about the possibility of showing him the mansion. For a long time, the home was more of a hindrance than an asset. The gentle rustle of redwoods in the evening wind, the way the golden light danced over the polished walnut floors, those are the things I wanted to convey. Perhaps it was time, I thought to myself. For the very first time in my whole existence, I thought my danger had been mitigated. On a spring Saturday, Lucas and I crossed the Golden Gate Bridge heading north. The air was crisp and fragrant, and the sun was penetrating the banks of drifting fog. I had made up my mind to take him on a tour of the mansion. Throughout the journey, my heart pounded. I kept looking over at him, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. This house held more than just physical possessions. It embodied many memories of my parents' laughter, my mother's gentle wisdom, and my own hidden secrets. The woods parted as we wended our way across the Marin Headlands, exposing the expansive estate. The property was surrounded by tall redwoods, which stood sentinel over the pale stone that shimmered in the sunlight. Windows reflected the light like mirrors. Silence descended over Lucas. He got out of the vehicle slowly, as if entering a dream, and then he started to walk in a circle. "Ethan, you spent your formative years here." Subtly, he murmured. The knot in my throat prevented me from speaking, so I just nodded. His laughter was kind and full of disbelief. However, I noticed a hint of intrigue tinged with a more incisive quality in his gaze. Something changed after that visit. Initially, his inquiries were mild. "How many days did it take your dad to construct this house? Now who is responsible for the grounds?" However, as the weeks passed, they grew increasingly detailed and unwavering. "Since your father passed away, has there been a reapproval of the property? Whose name is it on the deed, yours or your mother's? Are you aware of the current market value of the estate?" As the sun sank and cast its orange rays into our flat, Lucas peered out the window and saw the Bay Bridge lights reflected in his silhouette. "Ethan, who would inherit the house from your mom if something were to happen to her?" Coldness gripped me. My grip on my wine glass became more firm. I attempted to speak in a calm manner. "That's something that concerns our family, Lucas, and I believe you grasp that." I saw a new thinness in his eyes as he attempted to grin. He drew nearer, his voice barely audible. "Married, honey. Everything that belongs to you should also belong to me, right?" As if he were slipping a knife between my ribs, his words cut deep. I wished he loved me, not my inheritance, and was just inquisitive. On the other hand, his shadowy eyes betrayed him. I kept thinking about what my dad had said. "This mansion will be yours someday, but just because you own it now doesn't imply you're a member of the wealthy." It was starting to add up. Riley became very agitated. He would lose it every time my mother and I remained late at the hospital. "Ethan, how much longer are you going to continue like this? Most of the time, I'm alone myself. You should know that we are married as well." I would gaze at him depleted. My dad was near death. However, Lucas appeared to be a bit irritated. After that, he started making passing remarks. "You know, if inheritance stuff isn't clear, the IRS can make life hell." Or, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who knows a real estate attorney. He thinks it's safer legally for spouses to be co-owners. With every repetition, my chest constricted like a vice. Simply put, his motivation wasn't romantic. He was on the lookout for a gap. When I got home from the hospital one night, I was exhausted, and my clothes had a lingering antiseptic fragrance. Lucas waited with his arms crossed, his expression stern and his gaze icy. What he said was, "Ethan, I hate it when you ignore me. The topic of your family's finances is never broached with me. You make me feel like an alien." I was about to speak when he abruptly stopped me. "How embarrassed are you of me? Is it that you're worried I'll want a piece of your lovely hillside estate?" My eyes remained fixed on him. Under the shade of the pines that surround Lake Tahoe, the guy who had embraced me now stares at me as if I were an enemy. My heart sank as I gulped down, maintaining composure. Lucas, my love for you is the reason I wed you. My home, however, is not a negotiating chip. He averted his gaze. His voice went icy. Perhaps something needs to change in our understanding of marriage. I could feel the wind screaming through the split that opened between us for the first time, an ominous hint that the one person I had put my faith in the most was slipping away from me. That fateful night will always be etched in my memory. The city lights glistened outside our windows, and the faraway buzz of traffic seemed like an ocean. Sitting at my father's former workstation, I had been perusing a folder containing his architectural drawings. The steadiness in his voice, the calm confidence that previously supported my universe, aches in my heart as I trace the pencil lines of unbuilt skyscrapers. Lucas was following close behind. He carried a stack of papers into the room, feigning an air of casualness that was belied by the visible anxiety in his eyes. Ethan, I have something I'd want to show you. On the first sheet which he placed before me, it read, Property Transfer Form. I felt queasy. As I read the lines, I blinked at the paper. After then, I noticed it. Thick red writing crossed out my name, Ethan Brooks. Mario Miller has taken over. It seemed as if the ground had disappeared from under me. I was utterly unable to raise my voice. What were you up to? Lucas attempted to appear innocuous with a shrug. Jeremy Patterson is the attorney I spoke with. He is an authority in California inheritance law. As your spouse, he explained, I may apply to become a co-owner of the property. He said it's only a formality, but it would help in the event that something went wrong. My heart was pounding so loudly that I could hardly make out what I was saying. Just a protocol. Without informing me, you attempted to alter the deed to the property that belongs to my family. He moved closer, his voice low and almost imploring. We are married, Ethan. What gives this matter such importance? Nothing belongs to you except to us. However, his eyes exhibited a glimmer, a flicker, as if he had just revealed his strongest suit. My body language conveyed my disapproval. No, that mansion is a bequest from my ancestors. Real estate is merely one aspect. My dad has devoted his life to it. Lucas's jaw clenched. Then what? Do you like to remain anonymous? Permit me to spend the rest of my life oblivious to your true value. His voice grew higher, crisp and sharp. I am Ethan, your husband. I am deserving of safety. I should be safeguarded, just in case you choose to leave. My chest constricted with a chilling fury. Nearly a whisper, I lowered my voice. Lucas' love is free of cost. Additionally, titles to real estate. And you attempted to embezzle from me. He let forth a little sour laugh. Oh my God, stop being so innocent. From the very beginning, you have concealed the wealth of your family from me. It's only for my own safety. After that, he took out his phone, went to an email, and then pushed it in my face. There were stamped signatures and an official-looking scanned PDF. However, in the middle, Lucas's name was written in instead of mine. According to Jeremy Patterson, the matter is currently being reviewed by the county recorder's office. He added. His eyes lit up with pride as if he had cornered me. With quaking palms, I gazed at the email. Did you hire someone to falsify a property transfer for you? Lucas lowered his arms and his voice hissed. I will have to find a way to ensure my future if you refuse to make me a part of your life. My whole being exploded. Because I got up so suddenly, my chair slammed backward. What you've done is not only treachery, Lucas. It's also against the law. In my own life, you attempted to wipe my name clean. I felt his intense gaze as he scowled at me. Well, I've already paid Jeremy $400,000 to expedite the process, so you won't be surprised to hear this. My veins felt as if they were being flooded with icy water. You paid what amount? Lucas clenched his jaw. He claimed he needed it to expedite the paperwork process, to sidestep bureaucracy, to have the county clerk sign off on it sooner. My heart raced. I averted my gaze while clenching the desk edge with such force that my knuckles became white. Suddenly it hit me. I hadn't been deceived by Lucas just yet. Also, he had fallen for a scam. I worked up the courage to speak. I need to know this lawyer's name and license number, so I asked Lucas for it. He paused, then blinked again. Offhand, I'm not sure. All I required was that. Early the next morning, I contacted the lawyer who had previously represented my father, a bearded elderly guy called Richard Moreno. His speech was parched like the desert. While I explained Jeremy Patterson to him, he sat quietly and listened. Subsequently, he murmured, "If you're looking for an attorney in California who specializes in inheritance law, you won't find one named Ethan. Your spouse fell victim to a con artist." As the reality crumbled into ash, I sat there with my phone pressed cold to my ear, gazing out at the metropolitan skyline. Lucas wasn't only out to take my father's name and reputation. He had wasted over $500,000 on an illusion. Additionally, we were nearly both annihilated during that time. I returned home that night to see him seated at the table, looking pale with sunken eyes. He started to speak, but I stopped him by raising my hand. "Lucas, I am already aware that." I reached out to Richard Moreno. "There is no such thing as Jeremy Patterson." His body sagged forward. "I wanted to make sure I would have something if you left me," she said, her voice trailing off. I gasped for air. "You used the affection I had for you as bargaining chip. You were deceived into selling your soul in an attempt to take my father's heritage." When he extended his hand to shake mine, I resisted. "We've exhausted all options, Lucas. Not following this." There was an ear-splitting hush between us. My marriage seemed to crumble in the stillness. The apartment seemed enormous the night Lucas departed. The hilarity, the inside jokes, the late-night coffee chatter. Gone. The sight of the Bay Bridge's lights dancing across the dark sea, serving as little beacons of hope, flooded my imagination as I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. Here I remained, as my heart broke into a million pieces. After 3 days, Lucas left. He sought to communicate, attempted to clarify. He tried, but I stopped him. Why? Because no amount of rationalization could change the reality that the guy I had put my faith in the most had attempted to cut me out of his life. With his shoulders slumped and his eyes flushed crimson, he crammed all of his belongings into 2 bags. At the entrance, he halted, caught my eye, and then spoke. "I apologize, Ethan, for everything." I remained silent, though. Simply said, "There are moments when words fail to convey how you feel." Days began to blend into one another after he departed. The bed would be deserted when I woke up, with sunshine streaming through wrinkled blankets. It's possible that he could still be there when I reach out to him, but all that was there was frigid air. Sadness is an enigmatic emotion. Not everything hits you like a ton of bricks. It may sneak up on you like fog beneath your door, encircle your ankles and drown you before you know it. Returning to my job was my attempt. Yet the danger assessments and spreadsheets were hazy on my computer. The sight of seagulls swooping across the bay would captivate me as I gazed out the window. The sound of my dad's words resonating in my head. "Whatever destroys you, don't let it define you." In the end, it was my mom who stopped me from going over the edge. She made a soft-spoken phone call one morning. Ethan returned home. Driving north, I crossed the bridge. By the verdant hills turned verdant by the spring showers, to the mansion in Marin Headlands that had watched me as a child, and back again. As soon as I entered the house via the front entrance, as if imbibed by an old friend, I was embraced by the aroma of polished wood and the quiet of expansive spaces. The sunbeams piercing through the stained glass windows of my father's former study transformed the air into a kaleidoscope of color when I discovered my mother standing there. With kind gaze, she turned around. "You're more resilient than you give yourself credit for, Ethan. You inherited this home from your father, just for fun. However, there are times like this, when you just need a fresh start." We were inseparable for days, rearranging long-forgotten furnishings, removing stale drapes. The walks were coated with cinnamon-colored snow, as we walked through gardens adorned with redwood needles. I could feel my father's touch in every direction I turned, ascending and descending the stairs, exactly where the beams met above. The window's artful framing of the bay in precise segments. But gradually, like the first blooms of spring that appear on the hillsides, my mental image of the house changed. No longer was it only a repository for long-overdue sorrow. There was potential there. Reconstruction site. As I stood on the balcony one peaceful evening, I felt the ocean wind in my hair and watched the stars fall like a shower of diamonds over the sky. Subtly, I murmured, "I will defend this house, Dad, and not only from Lucas and the rest of those who thought I couldn't deserve love, unless I sacrificed everything. The following morning, I contacted my lawyer, completed the process of divorcing. With little ceremony, I will not argue, signing off on a chapter I never believed would finish as the ink dries. After leaving the courthouse, I noticed the sun beaming down on San Francisco below. There was a weight lifted from my shoulders. I had finally broken free from allowing the suffering to define me, not because it had disappeared entirely. I returned to Marin Headlands via car. Had the vehicle parked, the mansion towered over the woods as I gazed out the windows, which reflected the afternoon sun like 1,000 little flames. It hit me. For a long time, I lived in constant fear that someone would adore me based only on my material possessions. But the biggest threat was thinking I needed to change to be loved. I had come out of hiding. My name was still Ethan Brooks, my father's son even now. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, instantly I felt at ease and at home. Sitting at the big wooden table in the sunroom of the mansion, my mother and I would watch the light break through the hillsides in soft yellow streaks one morning. From the garden, birdsong drifted in, and a subtle aroma of eucalyptus wafted on the wind. As she placed her coffee cup on the table, my mom glanced at me with hopeful, subdued eyes and inquired, "Do you think we could make this area wonderful for other people, Ethan?" I was confused at first. Was she implying that it may be sold? Selling it? Meanwhile, a grin spread across her face. "A lovely home isn't meant for mere admiration," your dad used to remark. "It needs to be alive, breathing, and giving back." Out of nowhere, I beheld it. The maze-like corridors, the sunlit library, the opulent ballroom with its gleaming wood floors, ready for fresh tales, every single one of them. We started then. We demolished the basement and transformed it into a cozy event space with exposed stone walls, soothing lighting that mimics candlelight, and more. Meditation groups and smaller creative writing workshops found a peaceful haven in the upper reading room. A white wooden bridge covered with blossoming vines, a lavender rose bordering a stone road, and what was previously a mere stretch of groomed grass are now features of the backyard's outdoor event. We dubbed it Brooks Estate Affairs. It started off as a simple neighborhood, with the sound of resounding laughter resonating through the gardens. A couple marked their 30th wedding anniversary beneath the shade of the redwoods. Members of a nearby startup's staff sat on picnic blankets during a retreat exchanging ideas while hummingbirds buzzed by. Word quickly spread. The home was reserved for a small wedding by a young couple from Oregon. Standing in the main hall, the bride spoke with a quivering voice as sunlight reflected off the chandelier's crystals. "This is more like a beacon of hope than a venue. For various causes, we put on little piano concerts, art displays, and fundraisers. Even a local chef held workshops in our kitchen for single parents, bringing the comforting sense of roasted herbs and freshly baked bread into the hallways." My mom jumped right in. She assumed control of the floral arrangements, gathering flowers by hand from nearby farms, and creating patterns that evoked untamed meadows in the midst of a bloom. We collaborated closely, picking out playlists and putting new lighting systems through their paces. My mother's laughter came back for the first time in years as she felt the burden of sadness lift off her shoulders. There was a transformation at the estate. It had ceased to be an artifact. It transformed into a sanctuary where individuals might find solace, joy, and a fresh start. And I picked up my pen once more than simply figures on a spreadsheet. A story, a memory, a reflection, etc. On occasion, I would stand at the ballroom entrance, whispering while I watched the dancers beneath the chandeliers. "Daddy, take a look at your house now. The stronghold that protected my secrets in the past is now crumbling. Lighted up the bay like a beacon now. Open arms to those who sought a community." The email arrived in the late fall. Subject line, simple. Simply 2 words, "Thank you." Seeing the sender made me gasp for air. The player is Lucas Miller. For what seemed like an eternity, I did nothing except gaze at the TV. As I hesitated to click the mouse, I wondered if it was worth it to unlock a door that I had worked so hard to shut. However, interest, and perhaps a glimmer of empathy, triumphed. It happened. The screen was filled with his remarks. "I realize that I am likely the last person you would like to get a message from, Ethan. I must express this, though. Just wanted to say thanks for calling it quits when you did. It made me face the person I had become and face truths I was terrified to face. In Spokane, I was able to secure employment at a modest career counseling center. That's the truth, and it's not pretty. People who have recently been released from prison or have been bankrupt are the ones I assist in finding a way ahead. Perhaps it's because I've been there too that I've now learned to listen patiently. Forgive me, but please don't feel pressured. Rest assured your previous beliefs in me were not entirely misguided. My lack of maturity prevented me from clinging to them. I hope you're as strong as you've always been. Lucas, please. Reclining on my seat, a whirlwind of feelings brewing within me. Ease, sadness, and unfamiliar gentleness. Reluctant to return, though. With my eyes closed, I exhaled deeply and said, Luso, I pray that you discover tranquility. The months spent repairing had taught me something after all. Remember that forgiving someone does not imply opening a door that should remain closed. It implies letting go of the burden so that it doesn't accompany you with each new day. Lucas had piqued my interest again. On the other hand, I could have finished my novel without him. All by myself, I was standing firm. I darted my eyes to the window. As they fluttered through the brisk air, golden leaves soared over the grounds of the mansion. It dawned on me. My father's house wasn't the only one I had rescued. I had rescued myself. Furthermore, that was the most genuine bequest of all. I now stand here surrounded by majestic redwoods, feeling the salty wind blowing in from the bay. Truths that I could only view through the fractures of my broken heart before have now made sense to me. What I've realized is that trust is the most valuable asset we possess. It may take a lifetime to mend what took seconds to break, but years to construct. What I've realized is that money, depending on your priorities, may either protect you or hold you back. A mansion is useless if its occupants are too afraid to look each other in the eyes. What I've realized is that love has nothing to do with joint bank accounts or co-signed mortgages. It's about prioritizing the pleasure of another person over your own control, showing up even when it's uncomfortable, and expressing the truth even when it hurts. The most important thing I've learned is that forgiving someone does not imply you have to welcome them back into your life. To cease letting the past dictate your future, you must let go. This is the one thing my dad instilled in me. What matters most is not material possessions, but rather the decisions we make when faced with challenges that threaten to divide us. So if you've ever felt the crushing weight of betrayal, or watched something you believed in crumble to dust, keep in mind what I'm saying. There is life after loss. On occasion, it marks the start of your destiny as an individual, because it's not about who's at your side that brings you happiness. Knowing your own worth and never again letting another person determine it for you is the path to self-confidence. It is important to preserve that legacy,